making deconstructed turkey today on the French Chef. I've always wanted to do that.
Oh, Lord. Cut.
So, first things first, we need a turkey. No, that's not me. This is this guy right in front of us. I'm more of a ham. This is a 12-pound fresh turkey. You can use a fresh turkey. You can use a frozen turkey. At the end of the day, really, with all the turkeys I've made over the years and whatnot, I don't really see too much of a difference. Get the turkey you like. That's all I'm gonna say. I have a 12-pounder. If you need a bigger one, everything we do today, you can do with a bigger one. Anything under an 18-pounder is a hen. Anything over 18 pounds is a tom. So typically, if I need more than this, I will get 2 of the same size, because I just find that it's easier in the oven. You don't need like a really big oven to stick this thing in, and you don't have to cook it as long. So anyhow, then we have water, and we have more water. I'll get into that. We have salt, we have more salt, some pepper, butter, because life is better with butter, and garlic, because we're doing a garlic herb kind of thing today. And here's all the herbs. No, we're not going to use all of those herbs. The 3 mainstays are, for this one anyway, is rosemary, sage, and thyme. Then we have some mirepoix that we're going to be using later. We've got the innards. So, oh, and wine. Let's not forget the wine. That's for scraping up the brown bits. Let's get started and deconstruct this guy. And we come to the question of brining. To brine or not to brine? Should I brine? Do I want to brine? Is it worth it? Nah, I'd say yes. I'm actually one of those people that falls in the category of wet brine when it comes to turkey, although you can do a dry brine as well. That's become very popular lately. There's lots of places you can get lots of information on brine, and I'm just trying to convey a really simple way of remembering it, which is 1.5 gallons of water to 1.5 cups of diamond kosher salt. What we've got here again is 1 gallon of really cold water, and I have a 1/2 gallon or 8 cups of more than warm, but not exactly hot. It doesn't have to be boiling hot. It just has to be warm enough to help you dissolve the salt. So I'm gonna put the salt in there, and isn't that cool? I like the way it does that. It just kind of explodes at the bottom. You just wanna keep stirring it until basically the liquid is clear and you can pretty much sort of see through it. A brine is really just a salt water bath, if you will. And a lot of the times you'll see sugar, right? People will also put sugar. Sometimes they'll put equal amounts, sometimes they'll put 50% the amount of salt. And you can also put all kinds of other stuff in there, but I'm not gonna put sugar in this one. I don't really think it needs it. So here we go. I don't know what that was, maybe a minute or so. You can actually see that there's no salt crystals left. Anyway, so now we're gonna take this warm-ish salt water and put it in the really cold plain water. Okay, I'm gonna stir that around. It's salty, which is the way it should be. That is your basic brine. Now we're gonna get to the turkey. Obviously, if you're wanting to serve your bird whole at the table, this is not the way to go because we're gonna deconstruct it. However, you can carve a deconstructed turkey in such a way and present it at the table that it still looks really, really nice. So that's really the only giant difference between doing a deconstructed or spatchcock turkey and a whole turkey, is that you don't get to present the whole turkey. I don't know, I don't think it makes too much difference, but just keep that in mind, because I don't want you to make it and then look at it all deconstructed in the pan and go, wait a minute, I gotta put it back together again. You can, but anyway. So here we go. We've got a bowl for some of the bones and trimmings that we're going to be using to make stock. Don't throw those bones out, never. We've got the neck, which I've removed from inside. Poor little guy, his little butt's falling off. Now, that can actually be roasted with the turkey, and I actually like it when it's roasted, but we're gonna go ahead and throw it into the stock for gravy. Let's talk about something that, very quickly, that people wonder, what the hell is that thing? Is this. You know, you hear giblets, right? And you hear gizzard. And this is a turkey gizzard. This is the innard that helps a turkey basically digest food, or any kind of bird digest food. They peck at pebbles, right? Between the rocks and the gizzards, these things keep going, and they help break down their food. Now, because they do that, these suckers are like really. No, the tape didn't get stuck. Tough. So today I'm not going to be using it, but that's the gizzard. And we also have the liver. You can add liver to the gravy, but if you do it at the very end, just before service. Otherwise, it turns everything bitter. So I'm just going to put that in there as well. The neck. So now we finally get to the bird. Okay, let's do this. All you really need is a sharp boning knife, but just in case, it's always good to have some poultry shears and perhaps a cleaver. So there's a difference between deboning and disjointing. Disjointing is taking the bird apart by the joints, disjointing, and deboning is actually removing the bones. If you're going to be doing like a roulade or something like that, then we remove the bones, but we're not going to do that. So stop talking, Dave. Get to the damn bird. Flip this guy over and see he's kind of wet. So even though it's a fresh turkey, right? No, he's not sweating. You want to make sure that everything is as dry as possible just because it's easier to work with. So here is the spine, all right? You got a couple like shoulder bones here sticking out. So what we need to do is remove the spine first. You can use poultry shears, and you basically just start on one side, right? You can use poultry shears and just sort of keep an eye, right, of where you're going. So that way you don't end up going off kilter, or you can go ahead and use a sharp boning knife. Same thing. And just kind of feel around. That's one side. And then it's always easier to work towards you when you're doing something like this. So just flip the guy around again and repeat on the other side. Okay? And that gives you the spine. So now here you have the inside of the bird, and if you see anything you don't want in there, just get rid of it. If you spatchcock it, you would turn it over like this, right? And then you would push, correct? You would push down and it would lay flat, and then you would take the wings and you clip them under like this, right? And then you would put this whole guy, like this would be lower, obviously, right? In a pan, and you would go ahead and cook it. But what we're going to do is deconstruct it. And here's the reason I'm doing it. The breast, ideally, no matter how big the bird is, needs to cook to 150 degrees. The dark meat needs to cook to 175 degrees. Well, even if you spatchcock it and it's still the same sort of thickness, this is still going to end up being overcooked by the time this ends up being cooked. So what I like to do is deconstruct. Right in here and right in here, okay, is just skin. That's it. There's nothing else but pretty much skin in there. So take your knife and you remove the hind quarter. So now we've got the leg and the thigh. That's one piece. That guy gets a bath. Then we turn around and we do the same thing on this side. And that guy gets a bath. Now we have the breast and the wings. I end up removing these guys, the tips, cut right down through the joint, because I want to use that for gravy. And at the end of the day, when it's cooked, there's really not much to eat there. Anyway, now at this point, I'm going to remove the wings so we can cut or cook or eat the wings separately or cook the wings separately. And I'm just cutting through the meat and the skin, and I find that socket, right, that joint right there, and I'm just cutting around it, not cutting into the breast. And there's one nice wing. Turn it around. See, there's a little bit of skin right here, which is basically the armpit. And you want to cut right down through that. And you can stick your finger in there too if you want to feel sort of where the ball joint is. That's always a good thing to do when you're disjointing or deboning, is to just always stick your finger in where you're going to be cutting, and then you can feel where you need to go. And again, I'm not cutting into the breast at all. And there's the other wings. That makes a nice portion, right? And it's nice and you don't have that little other guy sticking out. That goes in there. If when you're removing the spine and you end up having these sort of shoulder bones here, right? Sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. If they're there, you just get rid of them. Cut down. There's just a little bit of meat there. See, now it's pretty much loose. And then I just pull it down, cut through the joint, and that goes in for stock. Now you do the same thing on the other side. Break it down, or pull it down, cut through the joint, and now we have all that for stock. And lastly, these are the ribs, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and remove the ribs, only because it lays in the pan better, but we're going to leave this whole keel bone on, okay? And just when you're removing the ribs, you slice towards the ribs and away from the breast, because that way you don't cut into the breast. And that goes in there. And make sure, you know, your knife is really sharp. The other thing is, just move the thing around on the board as much as you need to, you know. You need to spin it around and face the other way, just go ahead and do it. I'm just cutting through the ribs right there. There. So that's a good amount we got for gravy. And then here is the double breast. Now I'm just going to, actually, you know what? I think I'm just going to tuck those in. Sometimes you can trim them off. So you get like some of that skin, right, where the neck is. Now, don't go ahead and trim all of this off. Like there's a cavity in here, right? Leave it, because you want to, we're going to fill this with butter. And even if you weren't, you want to use that extra skin to tuck under. This guy takes a bath. So in essence, what we have now is we have the two hindquarters, we have the two wings, and we have the two breasts left on the breastbone, and we have all of the trimmings in here that we're going to head and make gravy from. Herb butter is really, really good. Who doesn't like herb butter? And it works especially well on turkey, I think. So what we have here is, today we're using rosemary, thyme, sage, a little bit of savory, and some Italian parsley. We have some unsalted butter, some shallots. If you don't have shallots, you can use a little bit of red onion. Of course, the garlic, some kosher salt, and some ground pepper. And that's pretty much it. This can actually be made a week or two ahead of time if you want, and even freeze it and just take it out, you know, roll it into a little log or what have you, and freeze it and take it out when you need it. And it also makes a great butter to use in all kinds of other dishes. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and take some rosemary, and I'm just going to do it to taste. I think if you want to follow along on the recipe, but I'm just going to sort of eye it, because this is the way I cook because I've been cooking for so long, right? I get in touch with my food. Read it and leave it. And just depend on your eye and your nose and your senses. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm just thinking in my head, based on experience in the past, how much herb I think, for my taste, will work with the braid. Just go ahead and with your forefinger and your thumb, just pull all the little leaves off so you can get the little branches there. Looks like a little bush. Stems are pretty tender, unsavory, so if I get some in there, I don't really care. You definitely don't want like the rosemary stems in there. They're like little logs. Okay, that's it. So now we got a bunch of those herbs, and I'll finish it up with just some Italian parsley. And I'll just pick up most of the leaves. So there's the herbs. Now we're going to go ahead and put in the garlic. And again, this is to taste, okay? But I tend to make this is called a compound butter, right? A compound butter is any kind of a butter that you've added other things to, flavorings, whatnot, that you use in another dish or you use to melt over something. I like to make mine very flavorful because then you can always use a little less as opposed to using more. Shallot. And again, if you don't have shallot, go ahead and use red onion. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give this a chop first by itself before we add the butter. And I'm just going to go ahead and pulse. And for me, just when I start to see little clumps, they really want to form on the blade, right? That's when I stop. And that's sort of what you're looking for, is that texture, right? Now this will continue to process down once we put the butter in there, but we want to get it to this point first. That way we don't end up with big chunks in the butter. And this is room temperature. It doesn't have to be overly soft, don't melt it, but it can't be right out of the fridge, otherwise it's never going to process. You're going to see these cubes of butter sitting on top of the blade going round and round and round and round, and you're going to be like, process already, and nothing's happening. So just make sure that it's room temperature. Now we go ahead and do this again. So once you have something that looks sort of like that, go ahead and add some salt and black pepper. And that is our garlic herb butter for this turkey. It's gonna be so good.